This episode will profile the criminal life of Mexican Mafia member Manuel Tati Torres. Manuel Torres was born on November 16, 1940, and raised in the Torres del Amo territory, which is the harbor area of Los Angeles. As a young teenager, he became known on the streets as Gordo from La Rana. He would later change his placazo, his street gang name, to Tati from La Rana. La Rana would become one of the most influential barrios in this region, primarily due to the high-ranking Mexican Mafia members produced from this street gang. Like many young homies growing up in the barrio, Tati adapted to the street lifestyle by becoming a frequent resident of LA Juvenile Hall, Youth Authority facilities, and in the 1960s was reunited with La Rana homeboy Victorio Murillo. Both served time together in various California state prisons. Both became members of the Mexican Mafia prison gang. They and their families were extremely close. Their first major criminal act took place at Soledad State Prison Central Facility when they kidnapped a program administrator and held him for ransom. They demanded and received improved living conditions inside the lockup unit where they were housed. Tati, who was recruited into the MA in the mid-1960s at San Quentin, was paroled in the 1970s to Visalia, California, where he met and married his wife. Shortly thereafter, Victorio paroled to Visalia, and he, his wife Jenny, and their kids joined Tati as the Mexican Mafia's representatives in Visalia and the Central Valley. In that region, they oversaw and controlled drug activity in Visalia, Hanford, Fresno, Woodlake, and many surrounding areas. When I paroled from San Quentin in 1975, I soon inherited the responsibility of undertaking Mexican Mafia business, which included overseeing the distribution of quantities of heroin. Most of our drug dealers in the LA area were instructed to always be on the lookout for weapons, specifically handguns, semi-automatics, and shotguns. They were permitted to trade heroin for weapons and were reimbursed on each occasion when they made their reload pickup. I helped supply newly paroled MA carnales and established members with firearms, and this included Tati and Victorio in Northern California. Many Mexican Mafia members had premeditatedly paroled to cities up north: San Francisco, Hayward, Modesto, Visalia, Sanger, Fresno, and other areas where local gang cops were unfamiliar with these men. These areas were seen as virgin territory where drug prices were bringing back more than double what the market commanded in Los Angeles. Unbelievable how a few hundred miles could make such a difference. Tati and Victorio, like many of the MA carnales, were heroin users, but both were shrewd business operators and very responsible. The fellow La Rana homeboys made frequent runs from Visalia to LA, which was a measurement of their constant production. Between 1976 through 1978, there was a turbulent period of street unrest within the Mexican Mafia, and most of this originated from their lust for the dragon, an affectionate term we use for heroin. From those days to the present, I promise you that heroin and other illegal drugs is the overriding root of most of the murders and deaths that take place within the Mexican Mafia organization. Heroin represents big money for those who know how to move drugs, especially large quantities. Because gang members tend to enjoy the consumption of drugs, being in a position to acquire it on a steady basis for personal enjoyment is just as important to the fellas as is the revenue they generate from this enterprise. As I said, it is the root of all evil for these guys. It also creates many collateral problems. The organized chaos and internal unrest really hit the fan in the early part of 1977, and Tati was dead in the middle of it. Mexican Mafia member Gilbert Roybal from Chino was living in Fresno, which was less than an hour from Visalia. Fellow MM member Armando MANDI Varela lived with a girlfriend a few miles from Gil's home, and the two networked well together. Gil was smoother and better at the business end, whereas MUNDI was brute force, a human battering ram. MUNDI was a light heavyweight boxing champ at Folsom, and like many talented individuals behind bars, could have been great as a professional boxer were it not for his desire for drugs and his propensity for being a frequent tenant of California state prisons. MUNDI was the master of the F-bomb, spoke in one-syllable words, but he was the man who could tear you apart from the shoulders with a prison knife or with a gun in hand. He was rude and crude. Like many of us, he was a sucker for a pretty face, loved white girls, and you wouldn't want him as your enemy. The following wiretap conversation will give you a preview of MUNDI's attempt to elicit a murder sanction on the wiretap from Tati against Linda Boone, MUNDI's girlfriend.
I never met him. I don't think I want to meet him to find out about it.
Okay, now, hey, what I feel like doing, I feel like getting out of Dodge.
Yeah.
Alright. Okay, they let me out and all this shit, but I got a feeling if they come up and they're gonna just take me in again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what I'm thinking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you know what? There's two. What happened the other day. That's too. Or what do you think I should do?
Well, you know, the best thing for you is to get out of Louis, period.
Well, where do I go? I gotta get rid of this bitch, man.
Yeah, really.
Well, what do I? Hey, you know what Choco tells me, huh?
What's that?
We take her to the, well, you know, the other side.
Uh-huh.
But she don't wanna go with me this month. She's telling me, no, I ain't going nowhere. Get all this shit. You know what I'm talking about?
But she's getting delirious.
Hey, man, I know she is, man. What do you think I should do?
Wait a minute, let me see.
Chingada madre, son. Everything is...
It was very unlike an M. Carnal to talk in such manner on the phone. Even in prison, we always said, the walls have ears, Carnal. There will be more on this in the soon-to-air MUNDI Varela episode. On February 1st, 1977, Tati Torres, Elfie Sosa, Choco Montellano, and MUNDI Varela congregated at MUNDI's Fresno home, used as a staging area for a Mexican Mafia hit. The target was Gilbert Roybal. The fellas had voted in San Francisco and agreed Gil had to go because he owed me money. This despite the fact I had already forgiven the debt, and because Gil was not taking care of business in Fresno. All politics. It was really a power play, and Tati yielded to the majority rather than speak up for Gil. Tati was the driver on this assignment, and Alfie and Choco became the self-designated shooters. Gilbert's wife, Lupe, left a note, shown in this picture, at the county jail informing me of his death. Dated February 5th, 1977, it read, I don't know if you know that Gilbert Allen Roybal was shot to death February 1st, 1977 at 3 o'clock and died at 3:30 at Valley Medical Center. The funeral was February 5th, 1977. He was shot once in the back and once in the neck with a shotgun in the kitchen of our home. Signed, Lupe. Because Alfie's 38 had jammed, it was Choco, wielding the shotgun, who finished off Gil. Gilbert Roybal was only one of the internal executions committed by the fellas during this time period, and paranoia was running rampant. Everyone seemed to be eyeing other carnales with suspicion. Anyone invited to a mob meeting had their radar working overtime. One of the meetings the fellows held was in San Pedro in early 1977, intended to instill confidence to those invited and to relieve the paranoia some members felt regarding the internal house cleaning taking place. It was logical for some brothers to think they could be next, because gang politics can certainly be destructive. Everyone was told to not bring weapons to the park meeting. Their wives and girlfriends and kids were welcomed. Everyone attending knew the fellows would never do anything in front of kids and the ladies. So everyone shows up. I wasn't there because I was waiting to be released the following month from 2 murder charges that were dismissed. Elfie, Sailor, Largo, and Calote all gave me their versions, with maybe a little jalapeno sauce added. So you could cut the tension with a knife, as everyone forced a joke, a smile, a hug, and every move was closely scrutinized. Then, one of Dangerous Dan's kids ran up to Dan, complaining how some men had cussed at them and shooed them away from the swings and slides. Like a raging bull, Dan headed, with his son in tow, to a group of families who were playing with their young ones. The men, women, and their children crowded together, trembling in visible fear, and did not utter a word when Dan approached. Standing behind Dangerous Dan were his eme carnales, all brandishing handguns for whatever was necessary. Dan came to his senses and gave the terrified families 10 seconds to clear out. They complied, and Alfie Sosa was the first to bust out laughing. All the fellas had been told not to bring weapons, yet everyone had done the opposite. Talk about an icebreaker. The paranoia was now gone, the guns disappeared to their places of concealment, and it was time to drink up and have fun. On March 4th, 1977, my 2 murder execution charges were dismissed and I was released from the county jail. I also discharged from state parole, and 2 days later I flew up north with Sailor Boy for TATI'S son's baptism. 7 of us were chosen by Tati to be little Jacinto's honorary godfathers. The Catholic priest performing the ritual informed Tati only one official godfather could be written on the certificate. Now, usually, producing a gun was enough for us to get our way in most situations. In this case, we collectively grinned at Tati's consternation and unanimously suggested he go with the Mexican Mafia's founding father, Güero Buff. Relieved, Tati agreed, and that took a major load off Tati's shoulders. For a minute, he seemed to forget about the larger problem in his life, which was MANDI VARELA. The fellows were suspecting that MANDI and his girl Linda Boone were working with the prison gang task force. More on that later. After the baptism, we enjoyed the spread at Tati's home. All of us made an appearance, left gifts, showered the baby with affection, congratulated Tati's wife, Pita, and then we broke away to Güero Buff's motorhome to discuss Mexican Mafia business. That's how things worked in our world. Blessed occasions, such as baptisms, weddings, anniversary parties, and funerals, were opportunities for the fellas to get together to honor the occasion and conduct face-to-face business. We were getting everything straight from the horse's mouth. The fates of many were assessed and finalized, with the details left to those assigned to handle specific matters. But on this day, everyone was concerned about MUNDI. No one had seen him since his release on weapons charges from the Los Angeles Parker Center substation, also known as Parker Center. No one had seen him, but several of the fellows reported having received phone calls where he was asking many questions. Too many. As far back as I could remember, Tati was always worrying about one thing or another. His pronounced stutter seemed to worsen whenever he would get overly excited, and the mention of MUNDI's name was a definite trigger. As everyone waited for MUNDI's status to be officially revealed, one way or another, those with dirt hid out in Mexico, and some became very scarce. Others worried their doors could come crashing down any minute. Tati had been the driver for Alfie and Choco during the Gilbert Roybal hit, plus MUNDI's house had been the launching place from where they grouped up and departed from on the way to Gil's home. The next episode will feature Tati Torres as he operated in modern times, interacting with what I like to call the Mexican Mafia's Pepsi generation. It will include an extensive wiretap conversation and will conclude with an account of his final years as an M. Carnal. Stay tuned and remember, the Lord is watching every single move we make. Like the thief on the cross, it's never too late. If you have the time and feel led, check out the book of Luke, chapter 23, and verses 39 through 43. God bless you.